All right, welcome back. Today we will talk about, what title did I just write down? We will talk about AI in productivity, and there's a lot to unfold in this one. And I'm curious because we just had today our agenda meeting, Paco and I just said, I don't know about you, but Arc browser is full of bugs recently for me. It's slowing down, it's crashing. And Paco just mentioned, well, it might disappear. And I thought, let's not discuss this in the agenda meeting, our precious time there. Let's use these 30 minutes to unfold this, as is a good segue into this. They are working on an AI solution too, like Perplexity already provides, whereas Perplexity is the other way around. They are now looking into launching a browser. And you're shaking your head, Paco.
Yes, because I'm impressed. A couple of weeks ago, I watched an interview. It was, I think, in a Uncanny Valley, okay, this channel that is huge, by the way. Congratulations to the founder, because it's impressive how he generates content of quality. We will put and share the link, okay, to that episode, because I highly recommend to listen to it carefully, because he interviews Aravind Srinivas, that is the CEO and founder of Perplexity. And he's a guy that it's impressive, in my opinion. Okay, he's 30 years old, and he has a perfect combination of dreams, but also realities. Okay, he knows perfectly the strength of his company and also the weaknesses. Okay, weaknesses because he's in the tough field, I would say, okay, because he's competing with Google, with Apple, with ChatGPT, with huge monsters that, by the way, they have a lot of position in the market due to an insane amount of revenue that they receive, okay? For instance, he shares economic figures related to what Apple receive or Samsung receive from Google, okay, just by using a default browser. And we are talking about billions, okay, in the case of Apple, 20 billions, and in case of Samsung, 10 billions, okay, per year, obviously. So, well, and now you want to be, okay, the perfect browser, okay, for Samsung, for instance, no, instead of Android. And he shares many useful things, especially for our audience, our busy professionals, because the power of agents are there, okay, and an agent is nothing else, quote, like combining perfectly a search engine with an LLM, okay, and that's what Perplexity is going to deliver, because if we reduce, okay, to the minimum expression what a browser is just, it's a search engine, okay, that you want to search something. I remember when internet started, okay, and I remember going to Yahoo at that moment, okay, and just querying things and thinking, what the heck am I going to ask to this text box, okay? But that was the starting of browsing on the internet. And now when we compare that with Perplexity, we see what happened in 25 years. So imagine now that things are going faster. And I will end up this introduction by saying what his ambition is, okay, and dream, no matter that he knows that it's really complex, okay, but he thinks that how we interact on the internet is based on agents, because he thinks about how a billionaire, okay, uses a phone, okay, and he says that he just uses it for, in the case of Warren Buffett, for instance, that is, the different generation, okay, but it's the concept behind agents, okay, that he doesn't care about anything except receiving calls and some text messages. That's the only, he doesn't need any app. He doesn't need anything at all, because he got real assistants, okay, that do all the heavy lifting for him, talking about scheduling things, managing things, the agenda, everything, no? And that's one of the main goals behind agents, that it's trying to reduce the friction and interaction that we suffer using different apps, and having to spend a lot of time in our devices, no? And that's the starting point, but a lot to be developed. And meanwhile, we can talk a little bit about it.
I remember when I used Perplexity for the first time, I thought, I don't know, how should this replace Google? I used it the second time and never looked back. It was just, I realized just now, after using it for over a year, how much I use it. That's a good sign if you start using a tool without even noticing that you're using it, because you're already so used to it. So when a question comes up, I need to ask the web about something. I go to Perplexity on autopilot. It doesn't matter if it is on my iPhone or if it is on my browser. And I just asked Perplexity while you've been talking again, what is the AI solution that the browser company wanted to make besides Arc? And it was called Dia. And I say was because it was planned to release early 2025, and I haven't heard anything about it anymore. With all the promotion and marketing they did for the browser company, it seems it's not so heavy on this new idea. And but the idea was behind this was a contextual AI assistant that helps you browsing the web, and it is also a browser yet again. So I think the search engine that Perplexity created there, it makes much more sense now to expand this into the browser area than trying to make it the other way around. Because as you said, it's not a search engine, obviously, it's just a framework holding whatever you put into this a browser. And I use the framework Arc in order to hold my Perplexity search engine. What's unfortunate for when I search anything, and that's still the moment where I go back to Google, is searching for images or something like that. So if I ask, can you give me an image? It recommends me to go to Google and search there. And I think that's obviously always room for improvement. But there are so many things that I did with Perplexity that saves me time. I say, look into the forums, look into social media, and give me the comment, the consents of the community about this and this topic. And I always feel like this is collecting the information I would search myself, going to these forums and digging through and making notes about it. And this is really the biggest time saver for me. Besides all the things that I shared in previous episodes, like building a whole new PC configuration, and I just feed in the parts that I already have, and it gives me not only what fits together, but also the best discounts and many things that I used Perplexity a lot. And I'm using more and more the savings, the bookmarks, right? So I have some threads in there that I keep going back to. But we will see. I never used really creating these articles, although again, I like the idea. What I also use, not daily, but weekly, I would say, is the Discovery, the place where they give you the news and things like that. And I don't mind that this is AI generated because it's based on real facts and sources. So I get the best out of the different sources. And if I want to dig deeper, I always have a click away where I go to the original article and read the full thing. So I really like it.
Maybe talking about news is even worse, the human generated,
Yeah,
So we
that's the
don't know.
point. That's why I like the combination that it goes into the different source and gives you a conclusion.
One of the thing is again that the user experience is something that it's what creates the engagement. I would say that's why I love the graphical user interface, because the moment that you are interacting, and by the way, Rabin says something that it's that they want Perplexity to feel like Apple, and I think that that's a significant quote, that it tells me that they are in the right direction. Okay, because at the end, the front end, okay, the part of assistant that we interact with is critical and crucial. Okay, and if we compare the search results between Google and Perplexity, there's a huge difference. I'm not going into saving the search or whatever, and the interaction that you do with that information, but it's just the way that you interact. I use a lot the desktop app, and it's beautiful, go in there instead of just open a Google search. For me, that creates friction, and I think that for most of the people, no matter if you are conscious or not, that interaction with something that is really beautiful, that everything, and he tells about how much effort they are putting into each pixel. And at the end, it's something that I conclude any tool that is really amazing and that works well, it takes a lot of care of the graphical user interface. We can use examples like Tana, like linear, like, for instance, Craft, okay? The other day I was reading about how Craft prepares, designs, and develop pixel perfect every single bottom line, whatever, no matter the operating system, and it's amazing. We are not conscious, okay? I think that we tend to underestimate the things that we are not into, okay? But there's a huge effort behind those amazing tools,
I think
and
another tool
Perplexity is
that
no
goes into
exception,
this row is also Miro, because it comes to intuition. I hate something if I go to a tool and I have to read a manual in order to understand it, or a tutorial or whatever. It needs to be immediately. When I think about, hey, where's this feature? I should have an intuition. And if I go there and I'm surprised, oh yeah, it was there as I thought, then it shows me the UI UX works in this tool. And if it is not there, then either the feature is not present, then it's okay. But if I then have to go to Perplexity and ask, hey, where's this feature in this tool? I think it's also, it goes way beyond. As I'm editing all the videos for myself, for the YouTube channel and for the courses and things like that. Again, Final Cut Pro that Apple bought back then, and this native thing on Apple, is they really have their own audience. I always wonder, the Adobe Premiere, right? It's such a huge software company and so amazing, but it's so clunky to use. And in Final Cut Pro, everything is really intuitive, and you drag and drop, and you just expect how things work, and they work this way. And this will be more and more, because if you stay in the video editing area, there's what is it? Now I forgot the name. CapCut or something like that. That's the new thing coming. Yeah, CapCut, exactly. So that's a browser editing software that is really intuitive to use, and that's why so many people can easily make social media videos and so on. And it becomes very famous that now Final Cut Pro tries to catch up and goes more this direction than being a serious video editing software than Adobe Premiere, where you can make whole movies and things like that. And that's really a good direction, where if softwares identify themselves for a specific niche and not trying to do all at once. And now going back to Perplexity and the browser thing, how do they want to do this? Because that's a kind of broadening up the tool. Is it a separate software, or is it? I didn't look into this too deep.
Well, they call it Comet. And in this Comet, okay, and in this interview that it took place, I think 2 weeks ago, Aravind said that it was going to be launched within 3 weeks, more or less. So we are pretty close to see at least a first iteration, because that's something that these guys are doing too, that it's releasing products that obviously they are more or less polished, okay, but not with a lot of features, quite simple. We got the example talking about the agent, that it's something that I don't know who's going to use that at that moment, okay? But at least they put something out there to start receiving, feedback, and knowing what feedback is useful compared to the one that doesn't make any sense. So we will see, because maybe it's just an upgrade of the graphical user interface and the user experience of the current Perplexity tool. I don't know, because at the end, when I browse the internet, I go to different sites and whatever, but at the end, I'm already in a site of a third-party company or whatever. So it's just the beginning of something, and we will see, because it's interesting, and let's see what they do. Because, for instance, he was talking about, I don't know if you remember, Humane, okay? That was this device, this gadget that it was based on an agent and an assistant, okay? But it failed, dramatically failed, okay? Because since minute one, we couldn't see how that could be useful, okay? It was a pity, because the investment was insane. I don't know the current situation of Humane, but the device, okay, and the implementation failed, but the idea didn't, okay? And that's important, because since then, it was the moment that agents really start to take off. And I think that that's something that we will see, okay? Because that's what the next big wave is, okay? Instead of tools, having assistants, okay, that start hiding the tools behind, because that's for the end user will be something amazing. It removes a lot of friction, okay, and the agent makes the heavy lifting of that process, okay. Obviously, right now they are making, for instance, agreements with Uber, with many different, okay, retail services, restaurants, different chains of all type of businesses, trying to create those initial agents. And this is the beginning of something. I always like to go back and think about the moment that things emerge, okay, like AI or like even the internet, okay, and how simple it was. And it was, I remember, yes, at that moment I was working at PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I remember one guy that it's one, by the way, one of the most intelligent guys I've ever met. And he
So
was,
you're
we
talking
were
about
working
me
there.
then, right?
No, you are at another level. I cannot compare you with anyone. And
I'm
the
in
thing is
fourth
that
dimension already, traveling through
at that
time.
moment, okay, we were, well, working at 1 a.m. there for a client, okay, and he stopped and he was staring at the screen. And I said, what the heck are you doing at 1 a.m. without doing anything, just staring and looking at your screen? And I say, man, I know that there are a lot of opportunities here, but I cannot see anything. Well, and imagine all the things that happen afterwards based on the internet. And it's amazing right now talking about AI and the agents and how we interact, okay? The point is that this is exactly the same, I think, like in the automobile industry, okay, where electric cars are not growing so fast because there's a huge machine running in parallel, okay? The big automotive producers, you know, that they got the stock, everything, a lot of money invested. And here is exactly the same, because this is not a matter of just AI and the possibilities of developing new solutions. It's how you implement them, how you make an agreement, you know, with, I don't know, a big aircraft company, okay, or whatever, to create the booking, all that. There are a lot of people. We just think that only Apple, Google, ChatGPT assist, but there are huge, you know, players in the market that have interest, and they are the ones who really decide the right timing, okay, when things are gonna work, and that's the thing and the reality. But no matter what happens, little by little, we are taking advantage of these solutions, and I think that we, as professionals and knowledge workers, are working each day much more easier. And I think that that's the important thing, no? That if we compare how we worked 2 years ago compared to nowadays, I think it's something that we cannot compare. And it's just 2 years. That's not time at all, no? So
I
let's see
remember
what's coming.
too, when my parents had a hotel for 30 years, running a hotel, and then internet came around, and my father was one of the first creating a web page for the hotel and with booking, even before the city themselves had their own website, right? So you are on the forefront. He was always on the technical side. That's why I was born into this, always being on the edge of technology. And I remember how this website looked, man. It was self-made, but it worked because it was the first thing. And then over the years, more and more hotels obviously hired marketing agencies who are specialized in creating web design and things like that, and built these websites. And that's where you have to stay up to date as well. You cannot just, it's good to be the first in some technologies, but you need to have to grow with the technology as well. Otherwise, you are left behind again. And I see this as well with the chat GPT, right? It's nice if you can ask some prompts, but man, we are using it since day one, and the custom GPTs that I built for myself, which are my agents, right? I have just a YouTube custom chat GPT that I call Exxon. It's just a name for it, and I see a real person behind it, more or less real, right? But it is like a discussion between two who have the same knowledge about YouTube and the strategy that we want and the target audience and things like that. And it is just amazing when I feed in my ideas, and it is perfectly like-minded. And that's, you cannot achieve this with template prompt that you put into this. And these are things that is like it is with all other templates too. You will be behind if you don't understand what you're really doing there, or what is the goal that you want to achieve with this. And that's really amazing. And I love it. Every day, new things. And this will be just another step, as you say. And these AI agents, curious how all this will develop. We've been joking about maybe there's a new OS that has everything. Who knows what the
Well,
future
that's something
brings?
that they discuss and why nobody is going to build an OS at this moment because the costs of producing
Well, and I
that,
always
it's
said that
insane and
the
it doesn't make
internet is
sense.
the OS. You know, you have here, they're always the best platform where you can show it up in any other platform too, OS operating system too. And as you just said, the cost is one thing, but then the adaptation as well. So how many people will actually use it? And then, and this already starts when creating a browser. What about the extensions that I'm using that I have to rely on? All the other tools that are working in this. And I guess it's not based on Chromium like Arc is. So it makes it then harder to use extensions. But on the other hand, we see an example like Superhuman. You don't have the Gmail extensions that you are able to use, but they have such a great solution that I never missed anything to organize the emails or things like that. So I'm open-minded for this, and that's why, and I think that's how I can conclude this session here. That's why you need to know your workflows. If you know your workflows and that you have different workflows, you can perfectly use the specific tools to enhance specific processes in your productivity system. And there will be room for the Perplexity browser as well. There might be things that I need to rely on still on a Chrome browser or Arc browser. And that's just something you can be aware of if you know the tool agnostic processes behind your business
Yeah, and
productivity
I
system.
always say something, if a software is good enough, you don't need extensions coming from third parties at all, because they have perfectly analyzed a huge workflow, okay, of work in our case, and they have delivered all the different things that you may need for that workflow. So it doesn't, and everything makes sense. You know, the moment that you start betting on extensions, on third-party contents, that's something that will hurt, you know, the solution by
Obviously, yeah.
definition, you
But
know,
it
by
starts with the
definition, because
password
the
manager.
approach,
So you have to provide all the things, right?
correct. Correct, and that's the thing, and I'm convinced that Perplexity will end up delivering something that is useful. And as I've always said and stated, and you too, Tom, AI will enhance how we work. Okay, we've survived the internet. Okay, that it was something that maybe it was even a bigger change compared to this one, you know, because this is an enhancement of something that more or less we had an idea, but the internet was something disruptive. The other day I was, by the way, watching a documentary, and they were sharing the news at that moment, and people trying to explain to the society what internet was, man. And it was really amazing how difficult it is for a person or for human beings, okay, to understand something that is not tangible, that it's an idea, a concept. It's something really difficult. And now that we are used to internet and we have seen millions of different implementations, now we perfectly understand that concept, okay? But at that moment, it was totally insane and
I think
really
another
difficult to
concept
understand for the
that we are not
people.
so
Yeah.
cautious about, not so aware about of, is the cloud services and the cloud storage. I think there are still people who really don't know what it is, but when they said I uploaded to the cloud and people thought, oh, there's something actually in the clouds that they uploaded to. That's really also a mindset change that you will be left behind if you really still bet that everything needs to be saved on your hard drive, and that's safer than sending it elsewhere to a server center that is backed. Obviously, it needs to be established one and a set of securities, but the flexibility that you get, especially when you switch devices and things like that, it starts with the iCloud from Apple. How easy it is to set up a new iPhone or new thing that you're not aware of. But sometimes it's the same people doing this and then complaining, no, I'm not uploading any files there. The same as when people say, I'm only using one tool, Obsidian, for example, or Notion. But in the end, they're just not aware of all the things they're using on a daily basis. What about the browser? What about the email client that they're using? All the things. And there's a lot more going on that we are even aware. Yeah,
Yeah.
great. guys, a lot of conversations in the chat as well. Thanks so much for sharing. And we will catch up next week with whatever will happen this week. See you
Correct.
then.
See you guys. Thank you so much.